The row 6 and column 7 is defined the dimension of the game board, which has 6 rows and 7 columns. The empty represent the character used to denote an empty space on the board, while the player X represent the symbol assigned to the human player in the game. The RT, which is equal to 0, represent the symbol assigned to the AI opponent. The win, true, and user that equals to true are Boolean variables that seem to track whether there is a winner and if it's the user's turn. Choice appears to be an integer variable passively used for storing the player's input.
This code is using a while loop to continuously prompt the user for input until a specific condition is met. The purpose of this code is to create a menu-driven program where the user can choose between playing the game or exiting, and the loop will continue until the condition is represented by user become false or explicitly changed within the loop.
This set of code block win is equals to true, probably preparing the game state for a new game. This variables controls if the player has won the game or not, and then it's initialized a two-dimensional array board with dimensions row by columns to represent the bingo game. Each element of this array is initialized with a space character, represent an empty cell. The started board is printed to the console. It iterates over each cell in the board array, printing its contents for an empty space enclosed within vertical bars. It prints each cell of a row separated by space. After printing each row, it prints separator lines visually separate row.
First, if win is true, it will prompt the user to pick a column. Then the number of chosen by the user, ranging from 0 to 6, will be assigned to column. And the second part, if call is greater than 0 or less than or equal to 7, then column is equal 7. If the less than 0 or greater than 7, it will print invalid column, and to be continued. And the last part, the chosen number by the user will be placed in the empty board.
In this code block iterates over each cell into the array, which represents the game board, and also it processes the position that chosen by player 1. After the process or iterate the code block, it prints the value of each cell in a row, and a separator line to visually separate rows, and prints the updated board. Here a random column index that generate between 0 and 6, and then starting from bottom row, it checks if the cell in the row and random column is empty. Then it places a piece into a cell and breaks out the loop. After inserting the piece in a random column, it prints the board updated to indicate that the board has been updated. Then it prints the updated state of the board that's showing new position of inserted piece along with other existing piece.
The provided code is checking for wins in a Connect 4 game. It uses nested for loop to iterate through the game board and check for horizontal and vertical wins. Horizontal wins. The code first checks for horizontal wins by iterating through each row and column combination. It checks if 4 consecutive positions in a row contain the same value, either the players or AIs. If a horizontal win is found, the corresponding win flag is updated. Vertical wins. After checking for horizontal wins, the code proceeds to check for vertical wins. It does this by iterating through each column and row combination. It checks if 4 consecutive positions in a column contain the same value. If a vertical win is found, the corresponding win flag is updated.
Hi everyone, I am the next person who will explain to you how this program works, and now I am going to explain to you how to check the diagonal win from this program. The first nested loop, the rows iterate through the rows and columns of the board to check for diagonal win from top to left to bottom to right. In the second nested loop, the code iterates through the rows and columns of the board to check for diagonal wins from bottom to left and top to right. It follows a similar logic as the first loop to check for wins for both the player and the AI. Overall, the purpose of this loop to systematically scan the board for diagonal wins and update the win status for the player and AI accordingly.
This block of code, if the player wins is true, the system will print player wins. And that's the same as the AI. If the AI wins is true, the system will print AI wins. But if none of them is true, there's a nested for loop who will iterate the whole board and check if there's an empty space. If there is an empty space, the draw will become false, thus indicating that the game is still not draw.
So, this condition checks if the variable draw is false, indicating that there are still empty cells on the board. If this is the case, the break statement is executed, which exits the loop where it's contained. In the context of the main loop of the game, this ensures that if there are any empty cells left on the board, the loop will break, and the game will continue prompting the player to make moves. Next, if the condition draw is true, it means there are no more empty cells on the board, and thus, the game has ended in a draw. In this case, a message is printed to the console informing the players that the game has ended in a draw. Afterward, this condition checks if the topmost cell of the chosen column is not empty. If this condition is true, it means that the column is already full because there's a game piece in the topmost row of that column. And if the condition is true, it prints a message to the console informing the player that the chosen column is full and prompts them to choose another column.
In the input menu, if the user pick 1, then we will start the game, and if the user pick 2, then we will print thanks for playing, and if the user pick other number, then we will print invalid. Then we have the first condition. Where it the user pick 1, the boolean user will become true, thus starting the game, and if the user pick anything else, the boolean user will become false, this terminating program.